Got it.
All right. Good morning and hello. I have the great honor of chatting with Erica today from the Guided Place. Hello, Erica.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for popping in and chatting with me. I realized, okay, I've been excited to tell you this. On Time Hop the other day, even though we've been chatting, I forgot to tell you this. I had a screenshot of one of your posts from a year ago. And so I was like, wait, I've been following her that long. Time makes no sense
I
anymore.
know. That's fun though. I'm curious
Yes.
what it was.
It was actually, I have it pulled up so that I could show you because I was like,
Oh my gosh, that is funny. I love that. Thank God for Time Hop, right? Pulling us back.
I love Time
Oh
Hop.
yeah.
My aesthetic background might mess with it, but I just love this quote, so I'm going to read it out loud. The more worthy we feel within ourselves, the less we feel a sense of lack in our relationships with others. And I just got goosebumps reading that out loud. And this is so much of why I do what I do as well. So I didn't mean to just dive in and unpack this right away, but let's do it. Tell me more about what this brings up for you and
Yeah. Will you read it aloud one more time for the group?
yes, the more worthy we feel within ourselves, the less we feel a sense of lack in our relationships with others.
So I feel like this is so much. It's so much about why I do what I do, or the how in which I do what my why is. If that makes sense. But to me, I feel like the more that we come from this place of wholeness as the individual, the more we aren't comparing ourselves to outside, the less judgment we hold for the world around us, and the more sort of that we find that we are complete on our own. The reflection back to others is simply us. There's no like taking things into such offense. There's not this sort of self-deprecation that we go through, I think, when we look at where other people are going or have gone. I really try to live my life in a way that reminds me to view myself first.
Yeah.
I think in a weird way, a lot of people think that, it's selfish, or to think of like oneself becomes this like very individualistic point of view, but it's not. For me, that's like the most healing for the collective, because I think a lot of us are getting so lost in what we should be or who we need to be for someone else, or what society tells us to be, right? That we've gotten kind of lost in our own individual magic. And I think that individual magic is like what actually helps all of us around, right? If we think about human design, and it's really reveals, yes, our differentiation, but also how we work well with other people or how we work with the collective. I think that's a really cool concept, also modeled by that quote. Now, that quote is technically from Mike Booth from Aura-Soma. And Aura-Soma very much is bringing us back to this place of home, to wholeness, for deeper consciousness. So we live out this sort of lived experience from a place of wholeness here, knowing that what we create on the inside is what kind of mirrors back to us on the outside.
Okay, so now I know why this message was just like yelling at me to start here, because one, everything you just said is so beautiful, and it just gets us set up because we're here to really to dive into the Aura-Soma and to dive into human design, and just it highlights what I'm doing with this podcast as well. Like, I really want to highlight individuals in their strengths and their definition, and like dig into their design so that they can shine as an individual, and then other people who are new to their design or trying to understand certain aspects can go to different episodes. And I can point, if someone's like, I'm an emotional projector, be like, that's awesome, let go listen to Erica.
Yeah, no, I love this idea. I think it's amazing. And I think more representation of that is also helpful, because I don't know about you, but like part of it is asking each other, well, how does that feel? Or what is that like for you? Right?
Yeah,
That experience. Because just because I may know a chart doesn't mean I know what that experience actually is.
exactly. And I'm the mental projector with the one line in fear motivation. So I can tell you about the 10 different books that I've read about it and the people that I've been observing. but
Mhm.
I can't really tell you what it feels like.
Mhm.
So yeah, like you just said, it just, ah, ah, sorry, I'm so excited. Um, so let me gather my thoughts. Let me ground myself for a second.
Good.
Because again, with that quote, I just want to bring it back real quick because I do think it's so important for people to honor themselves and to love themselves. Like you were saying, there's this hint of selfishness. And I've noticed that as well, especially geared towards women. It's like, oh my gosh, if you spend any time on yourself, that's selfish. A good mom gives up herself to take
Mhm.
care of the family, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah,
I think we're starting to move away from that a little bit more, but I know that's been such a hard one for me.
me
But
too.
like you said, when you honor yourself, you honor the collective. We need you to show up in your own individual beautifulness. So with that being said, I want to ask about Aura-Soma first because I am very new to this and I'm so curious. And I love your Instagram, obviously. It's like, look at the pretty colors.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember just thinking like, oh gosh, this is so colorful now. And I'm such a person who's like really neutral. Um, I love the color and I love color language, but it's funny on the feed, you're like, whoa. Um, Aura-Soma is a system of plant, crystal, and color energies. And so these living frequencies help support you in a holistic living and, of course, accessing deeper consciousness. So the way it really works is there are these, I'm gesturing behind me for those who are just listening. There's 122 Aura-Soma bottles, and they are these dual fractions, dual color fractions. And really think about it almost like a message in a bottle, right? There's a couple ways to access Aura-Soma, and one of it is to come to sit in front of it. We connect with our highest form and we make selections, and you pull 4 bottles, and those 4 bottles each have wisdom, and we share about the wisdom of those bottles, and then you're going to chat about like what's coming up for you. Think about color language as the language of the unconscious. So ideally what happens is these colors are then reflected back to you. Think of it as a soul reflection. What does the soul want me to address? And you start to respond. A lot of people will say like, I don't know why I'm bringing this up, but I'm like, I know exactly why you're bringing this up because you're sitting in front of our someone. But really it helps us work through, highlighting areas in which maybe we need to lean into, or areas in which we may be finding resistance to our own power, our own gifts. And it also is a reflection of where you are now with those things and the energy moving towards you. The other way to work with Aura-Soma, outside of receiving soul messages from it, would be color light therapy. Sometimes it's called Oralite Therapy. I often call it integrative healing because I'm usually doing more than one thing. I'll show you what it looks like, but essentially, say you chose, a bottle and one of the fractions had a turquoise in it, then you would use these energy vials. For the group just listening, I'm showing about a 3-inch vial of the same sort of energetics, and then a light pen, and you would put it inside the light pen and it would go into acupressure points on the body, so working within the subtle anatomy, so also receiving the energetics of the bottle. The other way, which I feel like most people know the system before the sort of the energetics got involved that are in the subtle anatomy, is using your bottle daily. And so using a bottle, actually I have my bottle sitting here. You can see this being used. I have a fraction that I'm holding that is bottle number 31, and it has green on the top and gold on the bottom, but you would actually shake the bottle. So shake your equilibrium bottle and emulsify the solution and then use it as a body oil. And if you think about it as like a tangible mantra, right? And we are connecting with the plant energy, the crystal energy that's in here. And of course, every color has frequency. So these living energies are then going on to the body. And each bottle has its own sort of, I think, keynote or mantra that goes along with it. And so I'm rising and setting every single day with these frequencies to really, either lean into or heal the aspects that whatever the chosen bottle message is. This bottle is called the Fountain. And I actually started using this bottle when I lost my job during the pandemic, when really, I was sad, but also knew something was coming. I'd
Mhm.
already launched Guided Place and I was doing that as like a side soul vibe, but this bottle really helped me, I'd say like anchor into the courage to like move into this space fully. And the fountain, oddly enough, is about bringing, the wisdom that you have through the heart space to share with the collective. So I thought it was like a really interesting bottle choice that just timed out exactly what I needed when I was going through the process of learning to share myself in this way,
That's
instead of my, director of product, director of operations version. So I kind of love, and I'm using that bottle very slowly on purpose, just because I don't know, I have like an affinity towards it now, and when it runs out I'll be a little sad.
yeah.
And then I've used several bottles. But I think the gift that Aura-Soma brings us, if we're receiving messages, is really a reflection state, a reflection of like what is our current energy, and nods that the soul wants to share. And I think when we're using it, it really does help anchor into this mantra, anchor into this ritual that we create for ourselves on where we're wanting to grow, where are we wanting to expand. I use this bottle called the Peace Bottle. That one's at home. And every time I use it, morning and night, it's reminding me that where do I create peace, right? Peace comes from within, and it's not something I'm searching for on the outside. That the more I cultivate it on the inside of my experience, the more I'm able to exhale it, right?
Mhm.
And so I love using that bottle at home because that's usually where the most disruption is also taking place. The more chaos with the kids and the many different, dynamics and personalities and designs all in one space. But I do love waking up using that and then grounding into it. Just reminds me like, where do I want to feel whole? Where do I want to grow?
Oh my
That's
god.
a little nutshell.
That's so beautiful. Okay, so let me see if I am understanding. I'm just going to reflect some stuff back.
Yeah.
So, you were saying it's like a response. So, if somebody's coming to you, like me, for example, let's say, okay, I'm starting this business, but I'm really scared and I know I'm supposed to do it, but I don't really know how, and I'm overthinking everything. Then we would basically talk for a minute and you'd present some bottles to me and then I'd see what I respond to and see what else comes out.
Ooh, actually, it's soul led. So you're choosing the bottles. And then
Oh.
I'm sharing what your choices mean. And also which position you put them in also determines things. Like, so
What?
for instance, if you came and you can grab one. And you chose this bottle, which, sorry, I don't have white on, so you can't really see as much. This bottle is the trust bottle. And I would say that, if this was something that you pulled, like, where are we needing to learn to trust ourselves? But also specifically with this bottle is like trusting your inner wisdom, trusting that what you have to give is valuable, that it helps, you know, create the collective that we want, creating this sort of more living in love instead of hate.
Mhm.
And really, it'd be interesting if that's what you were going through and then receive this bottle, because I would say I would really think about like, where are you not sharing? Where are you not, where are you dimming your light? Where are you not taking the step of sharing wisdom more than anything? So there are different, everyone's going through different things in their lives, and it's very much a conversation. It's not like I'm sitting here and like presenting in the way that maybe tarot would be, but it is kind of similar in the sense that like each card means something, each
Mhm.
bottle means something, but it's very much, I would say, the client is probably talking 50-50. It's we're really wanting to talk about how is this coming up for you, um you know and that's just a simple keynote for that, not even like the depth that it goes into. But really, I'd reflect that question and I would say, like, where are you holding in your wisdom? Where are you not sharing? Where are you afraid to shine right now? And then of course you would probably say something about, you trying to grow, or and then after really after we read the four, there's usually a bottle that really sticks out to that person.
Okay.
Usually something's like really like either through the messaging or just the color energy. I would say more so than anything, it's the color energy, because one will clearly sort of like vibrate in a way that like, you're like can't ignore it. And that's usually how people are making the decision on if they want to journey with a bottle or not. So you can come and receive soul messages. It doesn't mean that you have to use a bottle. In fact, I was exposed to Aura-Soma first in 2013, and I didn't use my first bottle until 2019. But what I have found so interesting is like now something has shifted because now it feels like everyone is ready to use a bottle. They're just like, I'm in it. I want to move through this. I want to heal this aspect. I want to, whatever they're doing for themselves, they're willing to take that journey. And I think that's kind of cool and interesting that like, just, almost a decade ago, not a lot of people were, I guess, and that I knew, stepping into like using them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's been such an energetic shift in the collective the past couple of years.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So it's cool though, because like some people who are coming into Aura-Soma where it's like, I'm completely new to this modality, I'm really excited, and then they were leaving using a bottle. And then of course like keep in contact as they're using their bottle, which might be 2 weeks, it might be, a year.
Mm-hmm.
But it is really, for me, it's been this thing that I can point back to the support of moving through something. And I've been getting, the feedback of like, I'll check in with people and like, what, when you finished your bottle, like, what would you say? What occurred for you?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's mostly that people are able to create this sort of mindful energy about where they're shifting and where they're, I guess I'd almost say like expanding into, whether you're releasing fear and wanting to move forward in your life, or you're releasing sort of maybe patterns in how you've been perceived by your parents, and you're trying to move past this and find your own sort of seniority of your space, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people who love crystals, I think, come to use it because it's figuric tinctures of crystals. So it's like instead of holding it in your pocket, you're rubbing it on your body.
Yes.
So I find that I attract a lot of crystal lovers. And I think that I attract, both, people who are practitioners and people who are not practicing, but really enjoy something like Reiki or reflexology or acupuncture, acupressure. Those are sort of the clients who are really like, yeah, shine that light, shine that light in the lung 6 acupressure point. I'm ready for this,
Yes.
It's a very gentle energy modality.
It is. It's very beautiful. Now I'm understanding more why I'm drawn to it, because I'm a Reiki master. I literally have 5 crystals sitting next to me, 6 at the moment.
Yeah, and it's that crystal energy screaming at you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I think, this one had, it's like malachite, calcite, zensite, quartz is in every single one. But there's also, calendula and St. John's wort, and there's other plant energetics in here. There's lavender actually in here too. And then outside of the equilibriums, there's also pomanders and quintessence, and those would be more of like the aromatherapy versions of the herbs. And pomanders, gosh, I use those sometimes like many times a day. It's like depending on where I'm wanting to sort of like cleanse and strengthen the energy field. So for instance, before I talked with you, it's like I use turquoise because turquoise helps with like mass communication, articulation, grounding into our Ananda Kanda. So we're speaking from our soul's heart, not just like from the space of mind knowledge, but from wisdom and body wisdom. Yeah, so like it's a really magical system that I'm like, when I experienced it, I couldn't forget about it. I experienced it actually on my honeymoon, and we were in Sedona, and it was so impactful that I was like, one day I'm going to do this. And 6 years later, I formally studied it, and here I am.
Oh,
I'm only one of 43 in the US. This is predominantly, it's a system from England.
Okay.
And I would say along the like Asian diaspora and the UK, like it's just really used there more so than here, but it's starting to grow here. But yeah, if you think about the entire United States, and I'm only one of 43 practitioners, you can see how little it's practiced here. But I
Wow.
do hope it's growing. I'm the only one in the Midwest. Maybe there'll be more of us here. I think there's someone in Texas, and I think there's someone in Colorado, but pretty much it's on the coast right now. There's people in New York and Sedona, LA areas, but
That makes sense.
yeah. I know, it's kind of like, oh, come on, US, we'll catch up.
One day.
Yeah.
Day. I know. I've been with everything happening around the world, which I'm not trying to get into at the moment. Like, part of me is like, when can I move to Europe or Australia? But then there's this part of me that's like, no, I want to stay here on the ground floor and bring the light. So
yeah, we need your magic, right? We need as many people who are willing to sort of like, how do we put love in the world, and instead of, I mean, the US is definitely going through a reckoning. I think that we'll continue to see structures shift, and hopefully some structures, fall and reimagine and reform with some of the incredible, designs that exist here. It is so easy to want to like run away from it. I agree, especially I think as a projector, and I can only imagine as a mental projector, the way I facing and wanting to solve and process that information. But
yes, it's
yeah.
a lot.
Are you someone who, chooses to turn off the news cycle at a certain time, or are you yeah.
Yeah, I don't listen to the news at all. I don't turn it on. I do have headlines that pop up on my phone because I figure, I heard Oprah say this once. She's like, if something important happens, I'm gonna hear about it. I don't need to follow the news to know that. I was like, that's very true. And so far, yeah, like obviously I'm gonna hear about things. So I'll just kind of be there, but yeah, I cannot just follow it. And everything with Uvalde, like I lived in Del Rio, which is just down the road from Uvalde for
Wow.
4 years. That's where my youngest son was born. And it was very much a time in my life where I felt like I just learned so much down there, and it's a piece of my heart. And so all of that, and I'm a substitute teacher and just involved in the school. So that one hit really hard. So it's been hard because I want to really love on and support that community. And there's a part of me that feels like if I'm avoiding the news, then I'm avoiding them. But I talked to a friend who still lives down there actually, and she's like, no, just keep showing up. Because I was like, what can I do? I don't understand what to do. She's like, keep showing up and doing what you're doing. That's what you do. That's how you help. And that really helped me because I felt like I got stuck in my defined mind, like, well, there's one way to do it. It's like, no, just keep showing up.
Yeah.
So that helped me too. And then I realized, well, yeah, if I show up, if I do like a Reiki video, or if I talk about love, then that interrupts the scroll, right? I can put some love out there in the scroll. So
I love that. I love that point of view. I think that's beautiful. And we don't all have to be like, I think, we're not all going to be the people who are able to march. We aren't going to be always the people who may have the money to like really counter or support like where we want the vote to lie. We can only do what we can do. And sometimes I feel like it looks different for people. And sometimes that means that you're creating this sort of beautiful light in the world and making sure people have this sort of energy that they're putting out into the world because they were able to pour into themselves when they were with you, right? They're able to see themselves more fully and have less hate for themselves, so then they have less judgment in the world. And it may seem small and may seem like we're doing something insignificant in that moment compared to like, going down there and providing like, a voice or medic or, but we got to do what we can.
yes, for sure. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know how we got to that topic.
Maybe it needed to be addressed.
It needed to come out. It needed to come out. But I do think it's important. I just want to again reiterate what you said, because yeah, when we show up in our light, then that's part of my mission with Full Heart. It's called Full Heart because when you fill your heart full of love, then that inspires others to fill their heart full, and then that's how we heal the world, one full heart at a time. So that's part of my mission. And I'm sure that there's other sensitive people who are listening to this thinking the same things. And I know there'd be some shame in me, especially back in 2020 when COVID first happened, and then, George Floyd, and there was so much coming out. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Because like you said, some people don't have the capacity to go march. Like that's a lot. That would be so much for me. And that's okay. Like, but we can show up when we show up in our light.
Yeah.
That's when we start to make change.
And I do think that there are people who would say it's like, oh, you're avoiding uncomfortable situations, or you're avoiding putting things where it matters. But I have uncomfortable conversations every day. I live in New Albany, Indiana, where it is it's not my liberal Chicago anymore. I lived in Chicago for 10 years. It was definitely different coming here. So, there are certain assumptions in the grocery line. There are conversations that your child comes home from school with certain rhetoric that is a viewpoint that is not of our home. And, how do you work through that? How many times do you meet with the principal to ensure the Student Bill of Rights includes gender identity, sexual orientation? And, like these are things that I think are important to make sure we're showing up for. But we're all going to show up in different ways. And I think there has to be deep permission, or people will be stagnant in the way, and they say like, oh, I can't do it that way, so I'm not going to do anything at all. Because I think we're each bringing something that needs to still take place, whether it's at the very local level, or, you end up in Buffalo and you're fighting for gun rights there. You know what I mean? Or I'm just, that's sometimes why I'm wary of like, like Facebook, for instance. Like I feel like there's so much from all sides where we're just like angry, because we don't know what to do with that anger. But I think I've learned so much about like anger is actually motivated action. It wants to do something. It wants to be used, right? So how do we use that anger instead of just like typing at the keyboard angry that someone doesn't have the same viewpoint? Like, how can I transmute that into something that's useful and actionable? And that's the way I stay sane about it. Is like, I don't want my anger to be static. I want it to move through me and motivate me into some sort of action. Whatever that action is, I'm not judging, but it's just interesting because I feel like there's, at this time where like social media exists, there's so much that's just like, well, I'll just like spew some more hate to the thing that I hate. And then I'm like, I'm not for sure we're doing anything, you guys.
Right. Then that goes into the energetics of stuff like the Abraham Hicks law of attraction kind of thing. Like, well, you're focusing on what you hate and then wondering why there's more of it because you're attracting it to you because that's what you're talking about. So
yeah,
how can you
passing the baton of like being mad? I'm going to pass the baton of like, this isn't right, and this is the action that I'm going to do to at least like counter it in my home, in my school, in my grocery line. And show my kids through like modeled behavior of like when we speak up, and how to speak up.
Yeah, because it is interesting. I live in a very conservative environment as well. I'm in a suburb of Houston, and it's very white and very Christian, and I am no longer one of those things.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting watching my kids too. But okay, one of my older son who just finished his junior year, they had this class where for the last 9 weeks, they had this change my mind assignment where they spent a long time really digging into one specific topic. They had to pick something, and it could be as controversial as they wanted. One kid did like college athletes who are on like get there on a scholarship should also be paid. And then just all kinds. But my kid decided to stand up for trans rights, and his argument was trans people should be allowed to transition. Like, let's honor that. But then there's one other girl who did the same topic, but then there was multiple kids who were on the other side. And I was just blown away watching my kid every day just like go there, knowing that the majority of the class and the majority of the school was very much against this opinion, but he researched it and communicated it effectively. And I was amazed.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, that's incredible. And that's just showing the lens in which, like, if we create counterculture to wherever we live, because I think nowhere is going to be, perfect. There are reasons why sometimes we're in the certain places we don't have the means to change it. But I think this speaks to the sort of ability and the power that we have as, the original messengers to our children, and how we show them and feed them with the sort of, again, it's just another point of view, and they're going to adopt whatever down the road. But for them to be a junior in high school and have these incredible, I'd assume, point of views that you've helped, grow in them, I think is amazing. And just someone being brave enough to talk about that, despite having, conflict on the other end, which I think is really cool to say, like, you're still safe. Like, you're going to be 100% still saying this. And that's not safe for everybody. And how awesome that, like, he says, okay, I'm going to talk about this. Because there's probably one kid in that class who's like desperate for wanting that sort of transition, or desperate to live out the version of their life that they're hoping that they can have one day.
Yes.
Who's not safe in speaking that, or it's far too triggering, it is hard because I also had to learn, like, what is religious tolerance here, even in our public schools, because I guess that's still it's still protected as freedom of speech, as long as it's not directed at someone. Then does it come bullying or hate speech? And how do you tell a 7-year-old, like, that someone can go around and say that gay people are bad, because it's their point of view? Like, how do you explain that? Because to her, she's like, well, you're wrong. And he's like, well, you're wrong. And this sweet girl, like, my Vivi is like, she's like, things are right or wrong. Like, there's no gray yet, and she was just really confused on, like, why this person thought they were right about this, because that is not, love is love in our home. And it's hard as a parent to help her understand that there are going to be many different viewpoints, and we cannot say that anybody else's is not valid, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we can say is, like, when someone is hurting someone, we're allowed to speak up, we're allowed to tell people, or we can also tell them, like, hi, I'm uncomfortable with this conversation, I'm going to tell the teacher if you continue it with me. But it's just so wild to think, like, how do I help a 7-year-old understand this, when it's like we're still navigating it, frankly,
Right. And I think about our generation and just how much has changed. And because I think just all of this has helped me to unpack some specific things for myself, where I'm going back and looking like, wait, did I actually believe that at the time, or did I just feel like that was my only option? And, it's so interesting to unpack. And so it is, because I feel like I'm learning so much from my kid, because he has more access to stuff. And then even these 7-year-olds, I think about, like, your kid at 7 right now, with how much is coming out into the world. Oh my gosh. Because, like, she's born into this world where there are options, where she can say, look, people love people, doesn't really matter what form they come in. That's it. Whereas, I was telling a kid one day when we were talking at school, is like, me growing up, there were like 2 options relational wise, and one of them really wasn't that much of an option. So now there's like all this. I'm blown away by the kids. They're like, well, I'm aromantic, but I'm demisexual or something. And I'm like, what?
Oh, you probably missed it. Say it one more time.
I think well, it is like there's just all these options.
Yeah, to live and to express yourself.
Right. And
And
they've separated romantic from sexual. Like,
yeah,
like y'all are so smart. Like,
no, they're gonna save us all. It's interesting because like watching the world through her lens, you know, and like what she wants to counter and what she's like, you know, it's not worth my conversation right now. You know, it's also interesting to see, and like why she makes those decisions. But she has a lot of open centers. She's only defined in spleen, emotional solar plexus, and throat.
okay.
Yeah. So
and she's a projector, right?
Oh wait, not the throat. Where is she? No, it's the ajna. Sorry, I wasn't even thinking. I'm trying to blend the two kids together. Yeah, she's a projector. She's an emotional projector. So it's just interesting because she has so much openness, and how she's sort of perceiving the world and what's overwhelming to her and what's sort of like, you know, what doesn't feel good. I would say she's also like really talks about environments a lot where she doesn't feel good in environments.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And you're saying too, she has that wide open G center, right?
Yeah. And really watching how originally before human design, I was really nervous. I was so nervous about, you know, perceiving her as this follower who would do like anything anyone else did, or, you know, we should dress this way. So now we have to wear tights and skirts all the time. And like, you know, just like there's just so much that I was like, oh my God, she just morphs into these people. And it felt nerve-wracking to me because I guess I would say I'm a strong personality type. I would say, you know, I might lean towards the alpha side. And I wanted to see her leadership as a parent. Yes. And the more that I sort of found human design, the more I relaxed into the fact that like this is how she discovers herself. This is how she unfolds aspects of herself through observing the other and trying it on and expressing herself through their expression. And honestly, like it gave me such relief in a way that I shouldn't have even been upset or worried, but you can't help as a parent the weird things you worry about. You know, or the past that could go down just because you're like, oh God, you know, what else are you going to take on from what other people think or say? You know, talking about points of view, right? Should we be moving down here? So that's like, it's just something to like, you know, that I'm always aware of with her and just really relax. But also, I mean, I think with the sensitivity to environments really gave me some permission as a parent to act differently too, because when she was choosing her kindergarten, we as parents chose like the top two that we were interested in her attending. You know, here's the school or this school. We feel comfortable being able to get to these places, blah, blah, blah. And we took her there. And we were like, play in this playground, walk through these halls, like what feels better to you? And she chose her school. And I know other people would be like, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. But it's like, I know the better she feels in a space, the less I'm going to have to deal with the like, I don't want to go to school vibe, right? Like when she feels good and she feels comfortable, then she shows up. And so that's something we did. And that was purely based on understanding human design.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And she's thriving in that school.
Yeah, she loves it. In fact, she keeps thinking about how like, well, at fourth grade, I have to leave this school. I'm just like, yeah, it's okay. You got 2 more years. We got plenty of time to figure it out.
Yes. Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, but she does love it. And I mean, she's someone who likes school in general. She's thriving in that sort of structure. But it's, I don't know, it's fun because I think she feels empowered by the decision. You know, and she's also, go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna say, I think that's so important too, to help her at such a young age to understand how to make empowered decisions for herself, instead of just telling her. So I know that's something that's been hard for me, is like I was such a people pleaser kid, you know, being so open, just like, okay, well, this is how I'm supposed to be so that this person's happy. And then I become an adult and it's like, well, now I gotta make decisions for myself and I don't know how to do that. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
great. That's beautiful.
We always talked about, like, as parents, like, one of the things that felt really important was confidence,
Mhm.
because my husband has confidence in spades. I mean, he really truly does. But he was also a performer, and he does TV film, and also with that same theater degree, also has a job as like IT engineer. You're like, he didn't even go to school for computers, but also has that job. You know what I mean? Like, he's a very confident learner, a very confident person. And I started out really confident. And then something has taken place where, like, I got less and less confident. I didn't speak up much in school. I definitely sat in the back. I did not, want to use my voice, because I felt like either I was being perceived as, like, something I might say would be stupid, or, there was a great fear in using my voice, and there was a great fear in sharing, to be transparent. And we both agreed, like, we thought if our kids could feel safe in who they are, they're more confident. If we
Mhm.
can give them anything, it is like to help them understand, like, what it is to be connected to yourself.
Yeah,
And it's funny, like, have you ever read The Four Agreements?
absolutely. Yes.
So people have told me to read that 1,001 times, and it was like, yeah, after I'm finished with this and this and this and this, and I'm finally reading it. And I'm doing agreement by agreement, so I sort of integrate, because I'm just a slower human in general. And then and it dawns on me that it's like, these are things that I could talk to a 7-year-old and have it as, like, posted on your wall, or her wall, next to her little chore chart, um, on how to sort of move through the world.
Yes.
And, like, how can I hand her this information, for instance? Um, I think that is a fascinating concept that I might also explore. It's like, yes, I've tooled her up with helping her understand little by little her design, right? Helping
Mhm.
her understand herself in those sorts of ways. But wow, like, there's so much more as a parent that can also help express, like, allow her to express and make these agreements with herself, for sort of, I get to move through the world this way. This is what I'm creating.
That's amazing. That's so beautiful.
We'll see. It's an experiment. No.
Isn't it all though? That's what
Yeah.
life is.
Especially the first kid. You're like, we're figuring it out.
Yes. Well, okay, so we're talking about all this design. It's so amazing. I want to kind of unpack some of your design and how you've lived it and how it's
Mhm.
shown up for you. Because there's specific aspects of yours that were calling out to me. And again, there's things I get so curious about since I don't have any of the definition
Yeah.
below. So, um, uh, first of all, interestingly, I've been asked a whole bunch recently, like, what does triple split definition mean? What is that? And so I'll describe it based on what I know.
Hmm.
But I'm curious, with you living it, how does it feel? And
Mm.
how do you work with that?
You know, I don't know that I was ever able to, like, pinpoint until the pandemic, which is kind of funny.
Oh.
But what took place, because there were some automatic things I would do in my life that were habitual, that I didn't realize that was helping me through this aspect of my chart. So triple split, knowing that, like, it almost feels like different sides will fight against different sides, like the needs or the wants, or how we want to move through, and really not like a cohesive, easy, like, plan in the body. Whether it's like, oh, I need to get this done because I desire to get this done, but my body's not in it and I'm struggle busing. You know what I mean? So, uh, do I need to, like, wait and pause and then I'll be more productive later? Or feeling really certain about something but not feeling like I can get into action in that moment, or not pressurize it enough to, like, move into it in the physical plane. What I have found about myself that I didn't pinpoint until the pandemic was how much I value the public aura, And those who have triple split definition, we really walk through, and as we engage with other auras, we're sort of filling in those blanks, those gaps, right? And it makes our system sort of communicate more, I guess, holistically. Let's say it that way. And I used to always, I would say, I was a casting director for 10 years in Chicago. And, we were amongst people all the time. You think about auditions, you see, 100 people a day, right? And so there was just this constant exchange of energy that I didn't really notice when I didn't have it until I switched my job. Then when I moved here and was director of operations, director of product, so on, I was working at a co-working facility. So then again, I'm in the midst of all these people, right? I'm walking through them. I'm sitting nearby, working near them. And then when the pandemic hit and you couldn't go anywhere, I felt almost explosive. Like I felt completely disconnected. I didn't know where. It was like so much energy that didn't know where to go where. Like that's how I would describe it. It almost felt like, I guess, cabin fever, but in my own body.
Okay.
And so I used to just drive in my car and just like drive around, like to try and just solve this sort of like, maybe I need to get out of the house. Maybe I just need to, but eventually once like, I donned a mask and went to Kroger, our grocery store. Sorry, I was like, people might not know what Kroger is. I realized the relief that I felt by walking through the aisles of other people. And I started to realize how much the public aura is important to me for how I'm processing the energy in my body. Just like when I walk I remember being on maternity leave with Vivian and walking through Target just to like be around other people. I thought it was because like, oh, I was home with my baby, but like it was because like I needed to like sort of get connected to myself. And I did that through exposure to others.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't know if that's like for everyone, but I would say that I have such a like, people have clarity in the shower. I have clarity in the aisles of public spheres or coffee shops, or, co-working facilities, in the middle of the zoo. It's like, these are the things in which I'm like, I'm having my aha moments,
Yes. Okay. That's so good.
It's not convenient. But it's certainly something. But it's nice to know that when I feel stuck, sometimes to get unstuck, I can just go to a park,
Right. Just be around people. And it's not necessarily like you need the interaction with the people. It's just the auras.
Yeah. It's just kind of connecting with others and looping some energy through the system.
Mm-hmm. That totally makes sense. I kind of envision it as like a clock, the wheels in a clock, that's the cogs or whatever. And so it's like you have 3 of those running on their own. Yeah. But then when you do the aura, then like random cogs come in to help the 3 talk to each other.
Yeah. I love that. I love that analogy. I think that's great. Yes, that's what it feels. It's certainly like when I need to feel really comfortable about a big decision and I processed an emotional wave, I will probably rest in public sphere just to feel that sort of processing that I think now that I can sense in my body, even though I didn't know what that was before, because I just never really was without people. It's a gift to myself. Like it's to see myself more fully, is to know that like part of that is environment of the collective.
Yes. That makes so much sense. And then looking at your chart as well, I'm thinking about the comments you made as a kid and school, like how you kind of shut down. And I can relate to that, like being scared to talk because you don't want to be perceived as dumb or something. I think part of that might be the projectorness. Like we probably said something that people were like,
I didn't need that right now.
Like I have a very clear memory in kindergarten. We were cutting out pictures of things that started with the letter D, and one girl cut out a dress. No, they started with the letter J, and one girl cut out a dress. And I was like, dress doesn't start with J. And she's like, yeah, it does. Dress. I was like, well, it starts with a D. But I think after that, I stopped telling anybody anything because that girl did not appreciate.
Yeah, she's not. I'd be like, jumper, my jumper.
But looking at yours too, like you have the undefined crown with both right arrows, and you have the 2343.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's, well, first of all, I feel like there's like 3 questions I have in there. One of them with the undefined crown and the both right arrows. To me, that seems like it'd make it a little bit harder in school because there's a lot of pressure with the inspiration, and the right arrows are kind of taking stuff in. So it's not like you're one that might want to focus as much. Is that true? Or like, do you know how that kind of plays out for you?
I think the thing that happened for me was like I'm so much more of an observer.
Mm,
So I didn't feel the need to talk. And then I was like shamed, shamed for talking if I was talking out of turn. Right. So it
mm,
was like I didn't need to comment necessarily on what I was like taking in, because like for me it was like a very internalized processing experience. And then I think that if I shared, I was either like commenting on something that was like 3 steps ahead, which sounds really weird, but like constantly being told we'll get to that, or we'll
mm,
get to that, or like I would be asking something that was like we were steps further. And I kind of just stopped asking.
mm.
And because either I had processed and wanted to move forward, or I was like done with that and wanted to move forward, because I think I was just so used to observing. Like I didn't need to work through it audibly. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But the challenge I think with the 4323 was that there's so much about timing, right? Timing and being heard, that I didn't understand that. And I definitely felt, how that it's like nicknamed genius or freak. I definitely think I felt that duality, or that binary existence, in the sense of either you were really well accepted and they thought you were interesting, or you were a total weirdo.
Mhm.
I grew up with like a lot of friends. I grew up with a space of like very close relationships, but if I was in an intellectual space, that's where I would want to shut down. Like
Mm,
I could talk to you forever about like deep, um open book, sort of like getting at that person. But if it was in this intellectual sphere, if it was in this place of like um what I'm supposed to know versus what I actually see, what is my inner knowing versus what am I being told to know, felt
yeah.
really confusing to me. I remember being a child, for instance, and like I went to Catholic school actually growing up. It was a Roman Catholic school, and I didn't believe some of the things that were being said. And I just was like, what, why is this? Or like, what is that? Like I'd be like, what do you mean a God doesn't like you if you do this, this, and this? Didn't they like make you?
Right.
Confused about like, oh, but not unconditionally. And so I was like a lot of pushback. And that's where I think a lot of the shutdown probably happened, because that's not how you were supposed to behave, or you weren't supposed to push back, or you were wrong for sort of the viewpoint or the insight. And I think that's the shift really was in high school to college, because I think college, I don't know if I ever spoke in a classroom in college, like ever. So I don't know. I don't know if I could quite like define exactly, but I just know that there's so much of me who like want to observe in an intellectual space
Mhm.
more than communicate. And if I'm in a interpersonal space, I will communicate very openly.
Okay. Now that makes sense. That kind of puts some pieces together for me. So thank you for sharing that observation, because I'm always so curious about the double right arrow, especially with that open brain. Like you're just taking in so much, it seems like. And then for you to have that 2343, my oldest son has that as well. And so I see it like live in him, but it's all subconscious for him. So I don't think he realizes how smart he comes across.
Oh yeah. If someone, I remember I was doing a blog interview and she was like, what was the word she used? You're so eloquent. And I was just like, what, me? Like, I was like, no, what? Like, I was like so uncomfortable with being told that. Like, cause I was just, I like, even immediately I feel embarrassed. Like my cheeks are getting red because I'm just like, someone said that about me saying something that's crazy. Because I don't know. I just like, there's a time when I felt like an expert. And that's in casting. I felt like an expert in casting because I had done it for so long. And then if I don't feel like an expert, I sometimes feel like my voice isn't actually that important. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I think is why the intellectual part gets like the hang up, because it's in a place of learning, not a place of necessarily knowing.
Interesting. Okay.
Because that ajna, I think, is powerful in the sense that like it wants to be certain.
Yeah.
You know, it wants to be right. It wants to know. And if I don't feel certain, then why talk? You know what I mean? So I had to really work through that. I feel like a lot of my late 20s, that's what I was working through. Like, it's okay to not know. And actually, my degree in stage management helped that, because we were really taught, like, if you don't know an answer, you don't pretend to know an answer. You just you need to say, I'll find that out for you, or I'll get that information, because you could make a mistake and something could go, horribly wrong. Right. So I'm someone who, if I don't know, like even before we talked, I was like, there's a blind spot. Also, like, I don't know about that, which I think is like a helpful way of like moving through it. That desire to be certain.
Yes. That's yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, with the defined ajna and the one line, like there's just so much of me that wants to be certain that I've had to unpack that as well. So I'm glad. Yeah. I'm glad when other people show up in that space too, where it's like, I finally realized like there's no way to know everything. So it's okay to not know something.
And the way we know it is unique. And exactly. That's what I really learned. Like, we are all, we can say the same word, and what that word might mean to you might mean something different to me, or just, the lens in which we view things from, mm-hmm. which is your histories and your childhood and your the messaging your parents taught you, and like, all of that.
Right. Right. There's so much. And then human design helps with that as well, because then you start looking at, well, specifically the PHS system too, and how you're specifically built to look at things. And
yeah, which you know so much more about than I do, for sure.
But yeah, it's all fun. But then we both have that 3 line as well. So how has that been? Did you have any like epiphanies or any, like, how did you feel when you discovered that 3 line aspect?
Well, it's funny because like, so the first sort of experience of human design was self, right? Like I was looking at it myself. I didn't go straight into having a reading. Mm-hmm. And the 2 things that sort of gave me the most fear was the line 3 and the channel, or not channel, the gate 28.
Oh, the struggle.
Mm-hmm. And I remember feeling like almost like frightened by both of those things. But then when I formally actually studied, I got so much more comfortable with it. And the line 3 exists in me in a very real way. Like, I'm someone who's like, I'm also a right angle cross of planning. So this really plays into this aspect, because they're sort of like fighting against each other in this interesting way. But I love to put something out and I have great freedom to change it. It's also the same viewpoint of like, I may have an opinion about something, but I'm never too old to unlearn and change or adapt when I learn something new. And I attribute that to my line 3, right? That I may be like flying the plane while I'm building it, but I'm super adaptable. Mm-hmm. And I love that about it, where it's like, yeah, have I bumped into a lot of things? I don't know, because I don't know that I saw them as like negative things. like even growing up. And that's probably because of the influence of my mom, honestly. But I think I always found like, oh, I tried that and I learned this, or I didn't like it, or, I just sort of moved through, I guess, mistakes in an easier way when we're talking about like big things. Like, oh, I made the wrong decision on that. And now here's how I'm going to course correct. I love course correcting. I love fixing. I love finding that sort of solution when something has gone wrong. And that's part of probably being a projector. That's probably part of the writing across of planning. And I just really love to sort of, I mean, you can even see how excited I get about like, is there a problem and I need to solve it? Like, great. So if I'm bumping in my own problems, if I'm learning through my own sort of like build, adapt, prioritize, that's invigorating to me. And the reframe was certainly helpful. The channel or the gate 28, I guess it is a channel, right? It's the channel of struggle. Yeah. It's the full channel. That channel, when I first like read about it, particularly in more of Ra's language, I was like, wow, did I have a lot of struggle in my life? Am I going to have like a lot of things that, have to make me persevere? Mm-hmm. Do I have to build resilience? What's going to happen in my life that I'm going to need that for? Right. That is how I first interpreted it. But now I feel like the way I understand it is I know what's worth fighting for. I know what's worth putting my energy towards. So to me, it's like the choice to leave my super cushy casting director job from Chicago, literally at the little creme de la creme of my career, I was like, I'm going to change, right? I'm going to do something different. I want to move back, boomerang back to my hometown. And I'm going to, see what's there for me. I want a different pace of life. With casting, it's very time intensive job. So, I really wasn't seeing my 3-year-old or wasn't seeing my husband. And I was like, it's time for a change.
Yeah.
And I understood that meant a pay cut, likely. I understood that meant discomfort in a different political environment. I understood that meant the discomfort of change. But I knew it was worth that struggle to have the life change that I wanted. So it was like, I accept that I choose this. And honestly, that is throughout my entire life that I can see that, where I say, I'm choosing this. And it has helped me. It helped me through many different things. Just to actively say when I'm choosing something, even when it's discomfort or uncomfortable.
Do you feel like your defined G center helps to direct you in that on some level too?
100%. Yeah. Yes. I think even at a young age, it wasn't like, well, I did grow up knowing like, oh, I wanted to be this, and like, and I became those things, casting, in the theater. But what happens is like at the end of the day, what I had to kind of decondition, I think, from the identity center was part of the open sacral, which is like that my identity became my work, or my work became my identity rather. Mm-hmm. And I had to really learn that I am me without those things. Mm-hmm. And that big shift honestly happened when I had my first kid, because there's so much about you that is changed when you have a child that like, isn't in the books. And I really became, I like birthed this new version of me, right? That had different priorities and different wants and needs and desires. And that didn't quite work with my work identity. And I kept trying to like make it work, like this like square in a round peg. Whole, and like trying to create this version of myself that I knew to be true, to also adapt this new version. And I realized that as you evolve and as you change and as you sort of follow this sort of core identity of self, this very like, I guess, going back to the truth of who you are, that those things do have to fall away and you can trust it. And I did. and it was scary. But I also reminded myself often that like fear and excitement have the same sort of physiological response.
Yeah.
So every time I got scared, I would just say like, I'm so excited to see how this works out or how this turns out, you know? But I deeply trust myself. I have always deeply trusted myself. And I attribute that to the Defined Identity Center. I don't, I might second guess like decisions or want to go back, or I might get like nervous about opinions or something, but like who I actually am, when it comes down to it, like that's unshakable for me. Like if I'm going to do something and I trust myself enough to do it, I'm like, I'm going to do it. I mean, that's a, like guided place. It's like, launching it for sort of like soul food, right? Like while I had a career, and then losing the career to the pandemic, and then saying like, you know what? I'm just going to try this. And I trust myself to try it because this is very me. And this is like my voice in the world. And when I really think about designing a life, right, I'm not thinking about like Guided Place as this business. Sure, it's a business, but it's actually how I want to move through the world, right? It is how I want to design my life. It is how I want to process my everyday through these sort of how I move through the world.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. But I really attribute that to the Defined G.
Jealous of not having a defined G all over again.
I will say though, the things I like admire about even like, so I have a sister who has an open identity center, and she's an older sister, but what I really admire about her is her great capacity to meet people with where they are. In a way that I think that people only with an open identity center can do. Like it is like she meets me exactly where I am. I don't feel like I have to update her on who I am. Does that make sense? Like, you know, how we like change and we grow. It's like we could, not that we would not see each other for a year, but if I didn't see my sister for a year and then saw each other, she would instantly know who I was in that moment at that time. And she would not have these projections of who I was a year ago. And I admire that about her, because for me, I still think I have to like work at like catching up, you know, or like not perceiving someone a certain way, because that's what I had known. I don't know if that's necessarily attributed to the open G, but it feels like it to me.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. That totally makes sense. And that is the beautiful thing. Like sometimes I definitely get jealous of having some kind of bodily definition. Like,
Yeah.
if I could just have some kind of system, that'd be great.
Do you ever feel the sensitivities of like transits, for instance? Like if you have a defined sacral, or is it very rare for you where a transit lights you up?
Yes, well, like one time I had a format energy light up, and I like slept like 4 hours that night and was like, let's go. And I think it was just in the moon, so it was like half a day, but I was like, that day I was so excited. So yeah, I can definitely feel stuff. And then you know, I'll wake up feeling something like, and then I'll check the transits, like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm always kind of like reassured by that, because I do distinctly feel like when I deconditioned the fact that I was a projector, because I was like that person that could, you know, I could work circles around anyone. I was like a machine and wore it as a badge of honor. You know, I was working, you know, 70-hour work weeks and like loved my job, identified as my job. And like, I never stopped because I thought that was really sexy.
Right?
You know, and now oddly the pendulum had swung, I think, too far the other way, like because it was also supported by the pandemic, I think, that I like haven't quite found my equilibrium again on how to get into action. And so then I get really like, I get nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, I used to be able to accomplish so much. And like a lot of high volume work. And now sometimes I feel like if I have, you know, like 4 clients in a day, I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? You know, sometimes I just am like, where did that energy go? Was it that the people in my office were all sacral and I just like ran off them? I don't, you know what I mean?
Probably. Well, and I think, tell me how you feel about this, because some of the deconditioning and the unpacking, once you get into your own design, and it's kind of a relief, because I would do that too. I used to, work multiple jobs and just do as much as I could. And now I'm like, dude, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but this is what I got the energy for. So
Yeah,
and
it's a permission slip for sure. But I
yeah.
do feel sometimes like compared, because my husband's a sacral generator, I do feel lacking sometimes.
Mhm.
Or like I feel like he has such routine that I admire, and I used to have routine in my life and I have it a lot less. Again, I think part of that pendulum swing.
Mhm.
And I do notice I function better when I do have some sort of like, ritual or routine, or like a way in which I show up. And I want to have that back for myself, but it has been so resistant for some reason. So I've just kind of been like, okay, well, maybe I still need more of this sort of like really feminine flow, really moving through the day in which asks of me in the moment.
Yes, I love that you brought up the feminine aspect, because I think that was part of it for me as well, where it was just so much in the masculine, especially being a full-time single mom. It's like everything was on me.
Yeah, I
And
can't imagine.
so the idea of just receiving and being in flow, I remember my aunt told me once, she's like, you just need to let it flow. And I was like, I don't understand what that means.
Yeah.
Like, nothing will get done. Do you understand that? And she's like, it will, you just flow.
You're like, no, we gotta get it. I so relate and understand. Yes.
Yes. And I had a turquoise ring with a little feather on the side, and I
Mhm.
wore that every day for like 2 years, because every time I looked at it, I would just think of the feather, like the Forrest Gump feather. And like, okay,
Mhm.
let it flow. And it took a long time. But now I'm, like you said, the pendulum is swung, and now I might be a little too flowy. Like, where did the
Get you
structure
find your
go?
balance.
How,
Yeah.
how does that happen?
Yeah. It does. And it does bring, or I don't know if it brings for you, but it does bring shame for me. And I don't want to live experiencing the place of shame. I do, it'll come. I trust that it'll come again, like in the right timing that it needs to. And I think it's going to come in July. Like I have a second location opening. So I'm in Southern Indiana, which is just literally across the river here. And I'm going to be at another wellness center that's across the river. So
That's
it's really my
amazing.
time. Yeah, I'm excited to see, what happens. And because of that, it's like I'm going to need more structure again. So I think like it'll give me the sort of like reason why I have to have it, and that'll be supportive. Um, but I do like structure. I'm not gonna lie.
Yes, no, I do too. And there's parts of me that miss it. But I think for me personally, I needed to learn the kind of flowy aspect, because, life is about giving and receiving.
Mhm.
And we have a hard time. Well, I know a lot of women have a hard time with the receiving aspect, ironically, where it's like,
Yeah.
because we're taking care of everybody else.
Mhm.
And so learning to nurture myself, and to even like learn to be okay receiving money, receiving
Oh,
compliments, you
yeah.
know, because I'm like, how do you receive money outside of a job? That's been a hard one for me.
Mhm.
Like, it made no sense. And so I think that's been part of my journey. It's like leaning into that.
Yeah. I love that journey though. I think I mean, you can see in my chart probably why I love that journey. I'm someone who wants an even exchange, and I need to feel like there was some sort of exchange. And now I'm really, to me, I remind myself that money is neutral, and that it is not good or bad, and that it is being received, and it isn't. I'm always in a place that wants things to be accessible. So I always want to make sure that like there are opportunities for my modalities to be accessible. So I do that, but I also have an exchange for my energy based on the like rate for the session, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I think that it used to be really hard to price those. And then I started to lean into the fact that like it's simply an energy exchange. And the energy exchange that I'm choosing is money. And I remember how you can lean into the discomfort of the choice, right? Or at least I feel like I can. Like it's worth struggling for, because if I choose money in this space, then I can focus more on my time of creating the opportunities for it to be accessible, but also share more of this, what I refer to as sort of like connecting and nurturing the soul and self into the world. I do compare myself often in the sense of like watching the barometer of like what is cost, like, is this realistic? Is this what the market bears? Sure, there are some of those things that come into play. What is the overhead, or things like that. But I try to just remind myself that I'm gonna do my best work when I feel like I'm having that exchange that's appropriate for me. Otherwise, I'm gonna end up bitter.
For sure. And I mean, and that makes so much sense. You have that 3740 in such a prominent placement. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's like vital to your survival. And so with that defined heart energy, it's interesting how you were saying that it's taken you a bit to like understand the pricing, because you have a very defined heart. Mm-hmm. So yeah. How do you relate to that defined heart? How does that guide you?
I think the way it guides me is more, I love the way Jess Fields talks about it. And she says, like these breadcrumbs of desire lead me to my life path. And so it's more that I don't ignore my desires. And it's weird because like the other stuff about the ego that I learned that was more like about this sort of like material plane, right? And the resources and knowing how to have the resources or how to use them, that was secondary for me. So really the way I feel and sense it the most was originally this sort of concept of like, I don't shy away from what I desire. When something piques my interest, I don't let it sit on the bookshelf very long. Because I feel like there's a piece of me in it, or helps me understand myself more fully. So like, for instance, say there's a book that someone, suggests to me 1,000 times. I will buy that book immediately and it'll be a priority. Like it will be in the list of priorities. And I may not get it to immediately, but I know that there's something that piques my interest. There's something in it that's for me. And in the right timing, I will have it. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's sort of how I live with the defined ego. I also know that, I don't know this to be true, but this is how I sense, is sometimes I feel like people can perceive me as controlling or loud or the person with the opinion first in the room. Or like because of like all the planning, all the structure, all the sort of like love to problem solve, like I'm the first person that's like, say you were like, Erica, I'm thinking about making a retreat. And I'd be like, okay, let's look at the timeline. Let's look at it. Like, I will just it might not even be a retreat that you want me to be a part of, but I'm suddenly like immediately in planning mode and like wanting to do all the things. So it can feel, I definitely feel like I can put that accidental like competitive energy out towards people where it's not, that's not the intention at all. It's just like so much excitement for like, what they're being sparked about, like what they're excited about has then pushed me into like, go mode, I don't know how to describe it other than that. But as far as the energetics of money, I use the ego, sorry, I know a lot of people call it the heart in a way that I will have more than enough for my expansion, and I trust that. I will always have more than enough for my expansion because I demand that for myself. And if I am, having a bad, well, I don't even want to say bad. I would say if we're having a week that wasn't as financially lucrative, I was like, hello, reframes. then I would know that it's coming through another lever, you know. I'll be totally transparent. Like, yes, I'm doing this full time, but I'm still just paying my bills. I'm not saving. I'm not you know, in a place where like my former career was pushing me. And that doesn't scare me, because like I know that I'm growing from a solid foundation. I know that I'm gonna continue to grow and expand, and that the more I'm sort of showing up for myself, the more people can sort of witness that and decide if that's the vibration they're interested in, you know, in working with. But also, here's an example of that faith that I have in that center is, you know, I moved from my home space into an actual space because Aura-Soma needed to be done in person. It's like one of the modalities that I do only in person. And I would have to pay rent. And I was like, how am I going to pay rent if I'm still trying to just pay my like monthly bills, you know? And then I was working with a bookkeeper and she was like, why don't you apply for this city grant? And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, they have a bunch of COVID money that they still need to work through. And there's like this city grant for small businesses. And so I did. And then I got $10,000 grant.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Like, what? How? I don't even know. I'm just like this little spiritual studio, you know, and they could give you $0 all the way up to 10,000. So I thought like maybe I would get $1,000 or something, and that would help me pay rent for a couple months. And no, I got the full thing. And this is the kind of energy that I'm like, I have more than enough for my expansion. I have more than enough for my expansion. And that radiates, I feel like, in that center for me, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it makes total sense. So I'm just going to see if you have any thoughts on this, because as an undefined heart person, I can hear the not self sometimes where it's like, well, you don't have a defined heart, so what are you going to do? Like, you don't have what it takes, you know, when I'm in my low moments. But of course, it's like, I'm here to really learn about it. So I had a question, but then it left me. But I guess how to encourage the undefined heart people, because I feel like
I love that question.
there's probably somebody who's like, well, that's good for you with your defined heart with 2 channels and an extra gate.
Yeah, it is a very defined center for me. I think the magic of the open ego or defined heart is possibility. It is the ability to look around you and see what is possible, and what about those possibilities are intriguing to you. What about those possibilities that say like, yes, and like, I need to know more about that, right? And that possibility and living from a place of possibility opposed to comparison, I think is such a healthy way to reframe in that area, and such a healthy way to say, if I believe in this possibility, say like, I don't know, I'm just gonna make something up, but like you want to be able to have $10,000 months, I don't know, and you see someone in this industry doing that, and you're like, wow, they're showing me what's possible, right? And I choose to know that that is a possibility for me, because it is defined or not, right? It's just understanding which one's sort of lighting up that center for you, and then knowing that like when you move towards your desire, towards your direction, well, that's more identity, but towards your desire, I would say if you think about it, you still have, is your heart in it or not? Like, I don't think that's only exclusive to defined, right? Like, I think your heart is in it. Then when you have the sort of pressure to do it, when you have the energy or the willpower, however you want to use it, then you'll accomplish things so much more efficiently and effectively, and not drawn out. It's like not a paced experience. So it's like jumping into the possibility and then saying, oh, I'm going to pull these actions because that makes me move towards that possibility. So I think it's so much more of a reframe. And also, like, I think when we tell people they don't have a defined heart versus they don't have a defined ego, that there's vibrational messaging there.
Oh, yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons, which I mean, by all means, call it what you want, but like when someone feels like, oh, I don't have a definition in my heart, that feels very different.
Mm-hmm.
And my heart doesn't know its desires, which is just completely untrue. Your heart does. It just has so many more possibilities, so many more things that could turn you on in like a pathway of like, 1,000 different paths. It just depends which one lights you up first and which way you head, But I do think I think that the open ego really can, just like any open center, can really kind of torment itself, that they aren't enough or they can't accomplish something or something's insurmountable. And I also think that comparison is a true thief of joy in this area, and I think that those are the two places I would probably look at the most when working with someone with an open ego. How are they perceiving the world around them when it's something that they want? And it also brings me back to sort of the Buddhist principles of suffering, like, wanting what you don't have, having what you don't want, and not knowing the difference between the two. Like really understanding those concepts,
Yeah.
I think that's probably where I would, work the most through unpacking or just asking, or
Okay. I just have to say too, it's so beautiful how you're talking. Like, I love talking to people when I have their design in front of me, because it like is a whole different level. I'm usually imagining it anyway, even if I don't have their design. But you have your view is possibility and your motivation is desire. So it's like you're just speaking your design right now, and it's amazing.
That is funny. I actually don't know those parts, and I know I can pull them up. I don't know them well. I think I'm like caves. There's like something about innocence in there. But I don't know that that part of my chart really at all, because it's interesting, like where I studied to a certain level, and then it was like wanting to integrate that level, and I have loved sort of nourishing people from that lens, that perspective. And I'll even tell them, I'm like, I don't do advanced chart reading, this is where we're sort of leveling into, and then I have recommendations on where to go to after that. But it's been so, I think, enlightening on just how to move through these 9 centers, how to sort of, open the strength and the wisdom here, and the reframes that we desperately need from conditioning.
Yes, there's so much power. And that's something I've noticed too, is the different levels of people in human design. It's like some people like you're like, I want to dig through these 9 centers. And that's where you're good right now. You might learn more later. You might, you might never, who knows? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. But then someone like me, like with my makeup,
that one line.
It's just never
me everything. You'll just train me in advanced reading. That's where you'll you're like, welcome to my human design camp. But I think it's so amazing.
It's just so cool. So it's funny you're talking and I'm just like, well, of course it's about desire and possibility for you.
Yeah, I would say that like I like the word possibility is a key word for me. I feel like there are I'd say there's 3 keywords in my life that feel very resonant to who or what I am. And one is possibility, and the other one is alchemy, and the other is embody. And I think that those words really describe the sort of current journey that I'm in, is like, how do I alchemize myself to embody fully my light, what my wisdom is, what my soul lineage is, what it is that I'm here to do, which is to simply be me. Everyone's like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And I'm like, the purpose is to be you, like fully and honestly and authentically. And that is the purpose, right? And then the possibility comes in because I am someone who is in service of possibility. I am a big daydreamer. I love to think about breaking down structures, like traditional work structures, for instance. I like the pandemic. Yes, there are lots of hard things about the pandemic, lots of hard things. But one of the things that stuck out to me was this amazing possibility of shifting work structure.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, it was like there are people who are in their homes right now who want to be, are able to handle, taking a break to do something mindful for themselves or feed themselves and not have to, have the stress in the morning of commute, or, oh my God, I forgot to pack my lunch, or there was just so much commotion that kind of like moves us even further away from ourselves. Now, I understand that that is not a blanket truth for everyone, but the possibility of saying, oh, you can work from home one day a week, or
Right.
4 or 5, whatever has happened, or the possibility of how many times that they've now been able to actually change things from like in-person meetings to like, well, let's just hop on a quick chat, or here's an email, where it's like we used to just like send these meetings, nothing would happen. But then there's people like me where it's like it totally shifted in the sense of, my work structure is gone and I had to build from scratch and just, what is work now? What am I designing now? And I think that possibility of like really challenging what it means to work and what it means to be successful in work is really attractive to me. This is that open sacral wisdom stuff that's totally coming through, because I used to believe, like we were told, like, you have to have a 9-to-5 job, you have to have a college degree, you have to have, this, and this to build wealth, to be successful, to feel safe in your basic needs. And I no longer believe that. And I don't know, I'm like unlearning that in a way that I don't know that I can formulate what the new way is. But I have seen people who used to sell art and need to pay for a gallery space and turn out, now just simply log onto their Instagram and say, like, I created this piece and it is, this much, and DM me if you want it. And like that has completely shifted the way in which that industry can work, right? You think about theater, like a lot of my colleagues, theater was just completely shut down. I mean, understandably so. But like, how does that industry survive being closed for 2 years? The ways they had to adapt and pivot, and the new possibilities of sharing art form was really exciting to me.
Yes.
So I am always, I think, looking at possibility. And I don't even remember how, like, why possibility is part of my chart. So you would have to explain that, but like,
yeah, it's your perspective. So the bottom right arrow, like the bottom black arrow.
Bottom right, yes. Pointing to the right, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that is very much my point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's correct for you. It's funny though, because we have opposite ones. So mine is probability. A little more wide ranging, I guess. But so it's always fascinating to me to see the different aspects. But I was the same, like I was fascinated watching stuff happen over COVID and just the creativity of people and how it really changed the dynamic of so much. And then it's been interesting because so many people are like, well, let's just get back to normal. Let's get back to the 9-to-5. Let's get back to the office. Let's get back to school day. And I'm like, why?
Yeah, it's like some of these parts, like, yes, I love, and some of these parts I recognize are not healthy for everybody,
Yeah.
Like, I think that like creating a sort of choice or just a change in the structure that allows for different points of view, meaning like different bodies work differently, right? And I worked at this the company I worked for that ended up closing during the pandemic. One thing I really respected and loved about them was, they wanted you to work when your energy was on. And this was not like a human design perspective at all. To them, but it kind of lends itself. But so some people were better working early in the morning, and some people were better in the afternoon or evenings. Like, to me, I'm like, my kids are up at 6. I am up. I am so, give me 8 a.m., like whatever. I'm happy. And if it's 4 p.m., I am slowly shutting down.
Same, yes.
So as long as there was like a 2-hour overlap between our teams, we were really allowed the freedom to work when our bodies and our minds were functioning the best. And I love that. The possibility of that was just such a breath of fresh air.
And I don't understand
like that.
Yeah, I don't understand why more organizations don't take advantage of that, Like I've been applying for some jobs just I've realized it's not great for me to be at home by myself all day. So I need to do something while I'm building this business. But I'm just reminded, where it's like, well, we need you to work when we need you to work. Like, why can't I just tell you this is when I'm available. This is when I'm the most efficient. Use me here. Why
Two
can't we
things
do
there.
that?
Virtual assistant work and co-working facilities. Those are your solutions. You know, I like, for me, while I'm building, I of course need another leverage for income. And one thing that I do is there was the company that I worked for, we did in-person classes. Like either you wanted to learn how to like decorate cookies, or you were learning like Illustrator, right? It was either like you're leveling up your resume or you're leveling up yourself. It was a company called Level Up. And one of the teachers I had worked with, we had a large teacher roster. She was like, well, now that you're not with Level Up, are you like available to like maybe do some stuff with me? And I was like, of course, because like I did operations, I did back end. And oddly, during the pandemic, she essentially paid for me to become a Pinterest expert.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so I do like her Pinterest account, and I do her email newsletters, and that is the like side thing that I do to ensure that like my needs are met, right? Or the family's needs are met, you know? And I kind of love it because I get to use my brain in a different way.
Yeah.
And the things that I'm learning through her business help reflect things that maybe I need to learn for Guided Place too. Because she's also, well, she's not like a startup. I mean, she's established, but it's been really cool to then witness this like female entrepreneur and how she sort of, honors her energy and the way she works, honors her needs and the way she works. And it's been really cool. So it's definitely out there. It's possible. Because I mean, the fact that, she pays me well, I have hours that I can go up to or not, depending on my workload at Guided Place. And there's like just a couple keys of like, I have to make sure this, and this is done weekly. And it's like, that is the perfect blend for what I need as I'm growing. And that work can be done anytime.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, virtual life is where it's at for supporting. I used to tell actors all the time as a casting director, like, what is the job that's supporting your career? Because in Chicago, actors often still had to have jobs. You're not just like on stage all the time and then, you're getting a steady paycheck all the time. That's maybe 1%. But there, I'm also applying that for myself now. It's like, how am I supporting this expansion? And I'm choosing to do that through, helping this other brand grow in the way that I can, that takes off that from her plate, right? It's a win-win. And it still sort of supports this, like the female entrepreneur. It supports both of us as far as like understanding small businesses. And eventually maybe Pinterest will be really useful to Guided Place. I don't know, but now I know how to use it.
Yeah. I've heard it's coming up, like it's coming back.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's definitely useful in the way in which it's like, SEO driven, and you can sell product on there now. And like, it's definitely useful. Plus it's evergreen, I mean, I use Pinterest all the time as like a user, whether I was like, planning my wedding, or I was planning, what I wanted the living room to look like when we were moving here, or checklist, because I love a checklist. There's so many on there that you can find, but even like human design stuff is on there, and that's fun. People make different, like tools and graphs and things. Which, by the way, have you looked at the Aura market? I'm obsessed with her stuff. They have a bunch of, bundles and packages for human design readers. Because I didn't want to like design everything, like meaning like you have to build the body graph.
Right. Oh yeah, that's why it sounds familiar. Yes, of course.
Yeah, she has all those body graph bundles that are, already designed in Canva. And I'm like, that was a really great pain point for a very small sector of the population, but I am so excited that someone did that.
Yes, genius.
Yes.
I loved watching her grow too, because I remember when she first started, and then just the way she built her audience and brought her stuff out. I'm always blown away because I don't totally understand how to do that for myself.
Oh yeah.
I'm always
Well,
looking at other people, but she's also a manifestor. So then that's where my not self voice comes in, where I'm like, well, of course it grows for her because she's a manifestor. I'm just a mental projector. So
no, but what's so cool is like, I think as a projector is I try not to define myself by the numbers, like, by followers or
yes.
post, well, especially posts. It's like, I know consistency is what grows, but also like it only takes, say you had 400 followers and all those 400 followers were consistent reoccurring clients, and it really just doesn't matter if you had 800, you know what I mean? Or
Exactly.
1,800 or, whatever the number is. But I also always go back to the place that like, I just have to be visible. How
Mhm.
am I showing up to be visible? And that can mean so many different ways, whether you're showing up to, do an event. Like I do a monthly thing called Saturdays with Spirit, or I attend. It's not mine. I don't curate it, but and it's also my way of keeping my modalities accessible, right? It's a cheaper entryway into the experience. But I also, oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
Being visible.
Oh yeah, being visible. Thank you. And so if I'm visible by doing one reel a week, then it's like, I did it. My one consistent thing I was like, I'm gonna choose, because again, I had to like make promises I can keep.
Yes.
I chose, like, I will do every Tuesday my weekly Aura-Soma messages, so people can go there, experience the bottles, make choices, get insights for themselves, right?
Mm.
And I do that. And people sometimes are like, why do you do it on Tuesdays? I'm like, because I don't work Mondays. Like Mondays are for me. Like I do what I want on those days. And so Tuesdays is when I do them.
Nice.
You know?
See, that's perfect. I love that. And
Yeah.
you're right, the visibility, the showing up, especially as a projector, just being the lighthouse and then letting people come to you.
Yeah. And I think that you can define what visibility is for you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you continue to like hide, or we don't allow ourselves to be seen, then no one can choose whether you're the vibrational insight they need, you know what I mean, or desire. And I don't think that has to look like a formula that exists. We don't have formulas for projectors. We're
No.
still new, Not
Yeah.
only are we still new, but it's like we know that our energy doesn't work like everyone else's, And so I think that um some of the coolest ways I think I share is just from a place of when I'm turned on to share.
Same. Yeah. I'll try to do the whole content planning thing. And I literally, like, I'm doing this group program coaching thing now. And it's like, let's build a week of content. Like,
No,
I don't,
it
I
just
don't,
doesn't. The formula doesn't fit. Yeah, and then I feel like a failure, right? And then it goes back to like going down that spiral of like worth, or low self-worth,
yeah.
because we can't keep up with that sort of expectation. But why and who is telling us this expectation? And honestly, you're gonna laugh because it's gonna go back to possibility, but that viral photo that went around, Tiger Woods is playing, and everyone has their phone out, and it's like a bunch of phones like watching this hit, and then there's this one guy just like watching with his eyeballs and holding his can of beer, and he does not have a phone out, and he's just watching in the moment, right, enjoying this. That guy has now, not only was he viral because of that, but he now has a commercial deal with that beer. You know what I mean? And just because he was present and who he was and visible. And now suddenly that's probably going to be his job for a little bit, because I'm sure I know what commercials pay. I know what things, from being casting
Yeah,
person.
you do. Yeah.
And long as he had a smart agent and has a good buyout, I was like, hopefully they didn't just get him. And he was just like, yeah, I'll do that for free. But I think that it's interesting to see what the possibility is, right? It's like it does not have to be the same sort of formula that exists. Think about just like if one of your reels went viral and you do virtual readings, and then suddenly you're reaching people all over the US. It's like this is the kind of like world that we live in now.
Mm-hmm.
That, there's so much possibility.
There really is.
Do you like showing up on reels? I notice you do a lot of like video, and I think that's amazing, because to me, I'm like, it's really hard for me to get on camera.
Really?
Yeah.
I forget that it's hard for people because it's so natural for me.
Is
Like
that part of like your work experience in the past, that you just have such a comfort there?
I barely have any work experience. I've been such a mom.
Yeah.
But I do have a college degree in speech communication and like public speaking. And
Okay. So there's where the comfort lies. Yeah.
yeah, well, that helped a lot. And then also, I really think it's just my mechanics. Like the more I lean into that, the more I realize I am literally just here to synthesize information and to share my viewpoint on it. And that is it.
Yeah.
And I would always say in the past, like my dream job is to be a professor. Like if I could just get paid to nerd out on stuff and then teach about it, I'd be so happy.
You're such a one. I love it.
I'm such a one. And then the more I just laugh at myself, the more I dig into certain aspects of my chart, I'm like, well, okay, like gate 48, you know, the gate of depth out of the spleen. I have that in 3 conscious placements. And
Oh
it's in,
wow. Yeah.
yeah, it's Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn. So pretty big ones. And then I have it in the 9th house, which is all about teaching. And like there's just all these different things that keep pointing to it. So I'm like, okay, well, this is what I'm meant to do. And so I'm so much better on TikTok. Like I love TikTok. I feel very invited there. And then on Instagram, I realized recently that I felt like I needed to show up in this like certain way.
Mm.
And it hit me that I had never once made a sale out of anything that I had posted on Instagram. Nobody came to me for a chart reading off of Instagram.
Interesting.
But I also, that's when it hit me that I wasn't being super
Wow.
authentic. Felt like I needed to be this certain way. So, and then it's weird because I can't take my TikTok videos and put them on Instagram because then it's literally like 12
Yeah.
views.
I heard that if you take off the watermark, then like you're able to, sort of trick the system, but
Well, I've done that too, and it's not
it
helpful.
knows. Although I'm sure the platform's really sophisticated. I'm sure of understanding where things are coming from, which is also creepy. But
So
yeah, I mean, I hope that like that reflection for yourself, that sort of like pivot for yourself, can be like, why do I feel like I have to show up a certain way on Instagram?
yeah, well, I kind of figured out like some of the HD people I follow who I really admire. It pains me to say I had to unfollow them because I kept, all the undefined stuff is like, okay, well, she's doing this, so I'll do a post like that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, stop.
And just that perfected form stuff, I think it's like, I have to remind myself a lot, like, that I am not that person, so I don't have to share it that way. But sometimes, like, the people that I do follow, I'm like, oh, that's such an incredible way of sharing that information. And I just reshare their stuff because I'm like, they are sharing this in such a beautiful, incredible way that resonates for me. And I want the people who follow me to read that, So
Yeah.
I often, like, I don't share like human design educational stuff on my thing because I'm like, if you want to get educated in it, like there are many different profiles you can follow, but also like self-study books, there's programs you can learn. Like to me, if anything, I'm going to share like my 3 of it. You know what I mean? Like how has it like helped me? How have I used it, or what am I using it for? How am I experimenting with it?
And I love those too. And I'll do some of that in the stories for me where I'm unpacking something. But it doesn't seem to really present well on the feed. And plus with the mental projectionist, like it just helps me to talk about something.
Yeah.
Rather than write it out, even though writing helps sometimes. Anyway, it's a whole thing.
But it's so cool because then you're bouncing off, like, I mean, that's why maybe you do more lives, It's like because you have that ability, you're not worried or concerned and you're not nervous about something showing up on camera. It's like, wow, well, how cool that you could just be unpacking things in a live. Like, I think that's awesome.
Yeah. I do that on TikTok all the time. Like if I go live on Instagram, it's like maybe one person will show up, but on TikTok, I'll get people who are asking me questions and having conversations. And so then, I'm also Valley's Narrow, all about the relationship. And so I get really lit up by that. So I've decided just like follow where I feel invited.
Yeah.
And kind of see where I go on Instagram. And And I do love watching other people unpack their designs. Like Jessie does an amazing job, and Sam Zagar.
Oh
Um,
yeah, Sam.
but I know Sam gets me like, and she's one that it was really hard. It took me weeks to push the unfollow. I'm like, I'll be back, Sam. But I think it was just so much of her defined heart, and I had to acknowledge that I was getting jealous
Mhm.
of her success, and that I felt like I needed to show up in some way, like I wanted some recognition from Sam, and it's like, Sam's not going to pay me. That's not why I'm showing up. I'm showing up to help other people,
Yeah.
be the lighthouse for them, and honestly, because it's my job, and I'm really hoping someone will pay me based on
Yeah.
my content. Um,
Well,
and
and
so
I love the way I love the way you're an advanced reader. And I love the way how much you already articulate a lot of the astrology lens that's in it. And not everybody, unpacks charts in the same way.
right.
Some don't, some are leaning heavy into the I Ching, right? And that's probably like it'll be interesting to see where I end up kind of going with the information.
Mhm.
But I love the way in which we all have our own sort of perception, right? So we even perceive each thing differently. And I love learning that perspective of others just because I perceive it a different way. Like that's why so many people are like, well, who would you go to for a reading? And it's like, oh yeah, I could totally tell you a list of people you might resonate with, because human design readers still want to be read. Like we still want other people to unpack with. We still want different perspective. Like unpacking my own chart is not nearly as fun as doing it with someone else who has a different perspective. For me personally, that might be my makeup, right? But
No, that's true, because I mean, everybody does have stuff. Like I hired Sam to do my reading at one
Mhm,
point, and I was so excited because I admire her point of view, and
mhm.
she pointed out things to me. Plus, with her defined heart energy, like she's toned it in so much that I was like, for 24 hours after, I was like, I could take on the world.
I do. I dream of doing. I want Teo Montoya to do my incarnational cross reading one day. Like,
Same. Yes.
one day.
It's like I feel like I got to get ready for it though, because mine is right angle cross of rulership,
Mhm.
and I have my north node is like 0 degrees Leo, and so there's so much that points to me like being a speaker and like being on stage one day, and I so much of me knows that there's
Give
still
her a talk. What's cool is the first 60 bottles of Aura-Soma correspond to the I Ching. And so that part where it was like an unexpected gift, right? So I have a feeling like advanced reading will be important for me eventually. I had received a scholarship for advanced reading, but it just wasn't the right timing because I was in the process of training for this, and this is a longer process for integration in between and everything. But I do want to explore like what does that mean, loving both modalities so much, and being able to explore it through both lenses is going to be really fun.
That will be cool. That's what I love too, is the things that people have mixed it with, because there are similarities. Because the first thing that came to me when you said that was like, oh, how cool would it be to have a bottle that corresponds with your conscious sun? To
Yeah.
get into that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. And being able to sort of like pour into self, knowing that's like the home energy. You know what I mean? It's like I don't know. I think that's beautiful.
So cool.
There's even like there's a birthday bottle, even like because the numerology is inside of here, and there's so there is, but the conscious sun would be a fun one.
It would be cool.
Thanks for that nugget.
Yeah. Okay, well, this is always what happens. Like I could talk to you all day, but I should probably let you do something else.
I could talk all day. But thank you so much for having such a thoughtful conversation, and being unafraid to just like go where the wind blows.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much. I really appreciated this conversation. I'm so grateful to you for your time and for you sharing your gifts. And okay, before we go, did you want to share any of your offerings or like where to find you?
Oh yeah. You can find me at guidedplace.com, and my Instagram, because that's the only other social media thing I'm on, is at guided place.
Beautiful. Yes. And I love your feed.
Oh, thank you. As inconsistent as it is. You can show up every Tuesday and have a little Aura-Soma reading at least.
Yes, you at least have that. I've been super inconsistent on Instagram lately. I'll figure it out one day.
There's time.
Yeah, it's all good. Thank you again
Thanks
so
for
much.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye.